Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to let you guys know about an opportunity to learn some of the most important skills in life, if not the most important skills. And those are the skills of learning and doing so rapidly, effectively, and easily. You see, guys, I'm putting on a completely free 60-minute webinar that you guys can check out, where I will be going into my absolute best memory tips, learning tips, and speed reading tips so that you can immediately begin applying them and accelerating your learning of anything and everything. All you need to do to claim your spot in this free webinar is visit jle.vi/webinar. We have showings at many different times throughout the days for every time zone, but you have to log in and claim your spot. So that's jle.vi/webinar, and I really look forward to seeing what you guys achieve. This episode is brought to you by Organifi. You guys, one of the only things that every nutritional expert that we've had on the show seems to actually agree on is that we all need to eat more vegetables, eat more greens, eat organic, cut out all the processed junk. Well, who has the time, right? Who has the time to go out, do the shopping, make the salads, make the juices, make the smoothies? And that's what I love so much about Organifi. Their product is an all-organic green juice. It has all of the nutrients that you need. It tastes absolutely amazing, and it's made by wonderful people who I consider to be personal friends. And as listeners of this show, you guys can actually save 20% on your first order. And all you have to do is go to Organifi.com. That's ORGANIFI.com and use the coupon code SUPERHUMAN at checkout. Greetings, Super Friends, and welcome to a special episode of the Becoming Superhuman podcast. First things first, let me read you a review by Angelique Delorme, 5-star review, which says, Jonathan is brilliant. Thank you. I have done several speed reading courses, but his is by far the best one, super complete, well supported, and documented. That is where my journey started with him. Through his course, I learned of this podcast and have been following him since and cannot get enough of him. Keep the knowledge coming. John, you are awesome. Love from Canada. Thank you so much, Angelique. This totally made my day. I really appreciate your kind words. And for those of you who haven't left a review, well, please do. On to today's episode. You guys, today we are joined by one of my personal heroes, someone whose work I've admired for years and years and years, and someone who has really shaped my thinking on a lot of different topics, from AI to Elon Musk to electric cars to the history of the universe, space travel. You're probably wondering, who the heck is this guy that writes about so many different things? Well, his name is Tim Urban, and he is the creator and writer-illustrator of Wait But Why, where he writes very in-depth posts on a wide range of topics, from procrastination to artificial intelligence, and it's just really an incredible blog. You probably know him because of some of his mega viral posts, from his post on why Gen Y yuppies are unhappy to his TED Talk on procrastination, but you might have recently learned about him because he actually got the opportunity to hang out with one of his more famous readers, Elon Musk, and spent time following Elon around and just learning about everything that he could through Elon and then creating posts out of it. So he's had more access to Elon Musk than many folks, and you'll see in the interview just the amazing insights that he has about what makes Elon Musk successful, and of course, how you can emulate that success. His blog, by the way, started in 2013 and now has almost 600,000 email subscribers, with over 1 million people visiting the site every single month. Incredible. So I was really excited to interview Tim. It's an incredible episode. He has so many unique insights about writing, about procrastination, and of course, about Elon Musk. I know you guys are going to enjoy this episode, and if you do, please make sure to share it. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to my new super friend, Mr. Tim Urban. Mr. Tim Urban, welcome to the show, my friend. I cannot tell you how excited. I guess now you know how excited I am. I'm slurring my words. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, man. I've been a very, very long time fan. And I often like to tell people that I knew about Wait But Why before everyone knew about it. I don't know if I knew about it before Elon Musk, but I've been reading for a very, very long time. I'm really excited to get into how you do what you do and all the interesting insights that you have about humanity.
Yeah, it sounds like good topic. So yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So first off, I think a lot of people are probably wondering after hearing your bio, how did you get into all of this, right? Because Wait But Why has only been around since 2013 and it's had a really meteoric rise. Tell me about your life and journey to getting to this point.
Yeah, so I was not writing until about 4 years ago. I finished up college, headed to LA, originally to write movie scores. I wanted to do something kind of in the creative world. And around the same time, I started a blog, just as a side thing on, blogger.com, just a simple thing, but it was fun. And I was also doing some music. And I ended up dedicating my full time to starting kind of like a test prep company, like, for SAT, ACT, stuff like that. Cause that's what I was doing as my side job. Mm-hmm. And it was actually, it was easy to procrastinate on the really, icky creative things, which were really like hard things to try to build and instead focus on the side job, which ended up turning into the full-time job. And then that became pretty fun. I ended up starting, partnering with a friend and we built a company, which was really gratifying and really great. But yeah, it was about 2013 maybe 2012 when I was starting to go crazy, not doing something creative full-time. It had been too long and I had it was, 5 years later now. And I felt that it wasn't the right thing for me to be doing business full time at that time. I don't know. So I talked to my partner a bunch about it and we thought about whether there's something we can do together where we can still be business partners, but it would also be something I'd be doing creatively and talked about different ideas and kind of starting like a full-time blog seemed like a good move because I really love blogging. It definitely would satisfy me creatively. It'd be really a big challenge. It'd be really fun. And also like a blog can turn into a pretty big platform and that has a lot of business potential. And it was exciting enough a project on that end for my partner, Andrew, that we decided it was like a good move and it was a way that we can kind of like just stay full partners, which is really, really fun for us. So that's kind of how it started. If I had been choosing this path alone, I may have still chosen to dive into a blog because it was a real passion of mine at that point. But I also might have done something, I was working on a musical at the time. I might have gone down that direction more. I don't know. It's hard to know. But certainly that's not a good business. I mean, it's a tough industry. And so I think this kind of pushed me to try to, also be practical with it. And I think it turned out to be a good path. It's definitely something that I've had a lot of fun doing and I'm excited about it still. So that's kind of how that got going.
Yeah. So one of the themes that I want to explore, and I'm going to ask this question probably in a couple different ways throughout the interview, but one of the themes I want to explore obviously comes from the fact that I teach accelerated learning. And you are perhaps one of the most profuse learners I've ever seen. I mean, you educate yourself about so many different topics on such a wide scale, from space travel to electric cars to psychology and relationships. But this first kind of learning project in the blogosphere was learning how to blog and learning how to successfully build a blog, which, if people haven't read, is very much a category changer. I mean, you're writing these super long form posts, not going the route of the easy wins like a BuzzFeed. How did you learn to blog and write so successfully?
Yeah, it's a very good description because I find myself kind of diving into different topics, like you said, whether it's, relationships or space travel or whatever it is. And I just am immersed in that, trying to wrap my head around it, trying to understand it and really, really get good with it each time I do a post. But when I started Wait But Why, you just brought me back to those first couple months, actually the couple months before it actually launched. And it was like doing a post on starting a blog because I was just fully immersed in research and, just tinkering around, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. So yeah, that was kind of like the first blog post was how do you start a blog? And I knew nothing. I still know not that much because I know very specifically, how to start Wait But Why. I wouldn't teach a class on how to, start any kind of blog because I only have, one very specific experience, but I did learn enough to be able to kind of, I think, take advantage of some of the kind of modern sharing platforms and modern kind of distribution platforms like WordPress in a way that worked well enough. So yeah, I first just had to figure out what's the platform. Am I going to go back to Blogger, which is what I was used to? And I actually ended up deciding to, first I was on Squarespace. That was a nightmare because Squarespace is like good for like static websites or for like a menu or for things like that. For, a regularly published blog that has all kinds of different formats. You want to have footnotes, that are embedded. You want to be able to put in, you want to have images. You want to be able to put in a map that you can click on different parts of the map. It's just not made for any of that. Sure. And so I built the whole thing there and threw it away. Then I built the whole thing in WordPress. Then I just got upset because I was like, I'm just used to Blogger. I'm not happy with any of these platforms. And I went on to Blogger and used that for a few months and ended up realizing that no developers can help me with Blogger. They can only help with WordPress because it's just not made for it. They're just not used to it. And so I ended up switching over to WordPress, which I now have gotten very used to. And now I like it and I understand why people use it. But so that was the first decision. Then there was, how do you...
The writing, just the style of writing that you do is so unique as well.
Well, even before that, it was just also sharing and how do you get the Facebook buttons on there and how do you, instead of an email list and doing all the things and Facebook page. And so that was actually a lot. But, I'm realizing looking back that it boils down to, a writing platform that you're comfortable on and basically a way that people who like what you read can easily share it and then continue to follow you in the future. That's it. And that's all that really mattered in the end. So yeah, that got rolling and then started writing my first post.
Now, were you always a gifted writer growing up, or was writing and crafting arguments and the written word something that you learned later on in life?
I definitely would not have called myself a writer before I started the first blog. I mean, it's not something I actually hated English class. It wasn't something I liked to do. Now, I guess looking back, if I went on a trip, I would come back and write a really long, funny email to my friends about the trip and things like that. And I never would have considered that writing. I still don't really consider that writing, but I guess I knew I could do something like that well. But again, I just didn't really consider that an actual important skill of any kind until I started a blog. And then I realized that kind of just being able to talk like a human as a writer and not try to be a good writer, but be able to do that in kind of a fun way was a skill that people care about. People actually like that as an online blog, for example. So I realized that I had a knack for kind of just colloquial blogging that I think my natural kind of way to do that was something that at least some people like to read. So by the time I started Wait But Why, I knew that I had an online writing style that I thought could get an audience. I didn't then, and it would be hard for me to kind of say that I think I'm like a very good writer. I think if I tried to be a good writer, I might be able to be. I really don't know, but that's just not, it's almost a different thing entirely to what I try to do, which is more like talk to readers online.
And it shows through. It definitely shows through. I did want to ask you, I recently put out a post, and of course, feel free to disagree, where I talked about writing as an exponential skill. So like people skills, it's one of those skills that you learn that opens up tons of doors for you and also changes the way that you think and communicate. Have you found that as you've written more and more, you've become a better thinker?
Yeah, I think so. I think it comes from a combo of all the research and thinking that a blogger like me has to do constantly. So you're constantly researching and then you're structuring all of those, either researching or just brainstorming. And then you're structuring all of that in your own head, and you're also having lots of conversations with people. And, you're kind of saying your points again and again, which helps you, again, clarify them. And then you're taking all of that and then you're actually articulating it, you're communicating it, you're kind of teaching it. And, people always say teaching something is the best way to learn it. And that's definitely true. And so I can spend all this time learning, but most of the actual time is going to then be spent taking what I've already learned and packaging it in my own head and twisting it around and analyzing it and simplifying it and then outputting it, actually communicating it. And so by the time you're done with all of that, I think it's just that you've done so much work on twisting around of the topic in your head to make it clear and simple that, yeah, of course it's going to help your thinking. You're kind of professionally playing with ideas. And so I think it definitely does that.
Absolutely. And I love that you touched on the teaching being one of the best ways to learn. That's definitely something, that we've put into our programs over the years is like, hey, you want to learn these skills, teach them to someone else and try and figure out ways to explain them. It kind of ties into the whole Feynman method idea. We talked about learning how to write and how you learned how to blog and learned how to manage the technology. How do you tackle learning a subject? I mean, again, for readers who don't know, and obviously for anyone who hasn't read your blog, they need to, and I would recommend everyone add it to their to-do list right now. The AI Revolution, 2 parts, each one about 8,000 words. That's longer than some books. And you jump from subject to subject a couple times a year. So how do you tackle a challenge that big?
Well, I think that the first step is always, I need to learn this thing. It always seems extremely daunting before I've done that. So I just read a lot. If I can have a million really good conversations about it, that's great, but that's just not often practical. It just takes a lot more time to set those up and to travel to where people are. And so for me, it's mostly going to be, YouTube videos are nice if you want to actually hear from people's own words.
Right.
And then reading, I read books and I'll just read them mostly sitting on my computer. I'll just fly through books and I'll read a bunch of articles and read a bunch of Reddit pages and read a bunch of Wikipedia pages and read a bunch of, online academic journals and just everything. And the idea is that not one of those particular sources is necessarily trustworthy on its own or is the complete picture on its own. It may be trustworthy, but it's one opinion on something we don't know for sure yet. But the entire mass of those, 70 or 80 of those sources together, actually starts to form like its own kind of organism of its own, which actually has some truth in it, either truth about the topic or truth about what we do or don't know yet. The truth that might emerge from reading 80 of them is that, the species doesn't know about this yet fully. We're still figuring it out. So either way, you wrap your head around kind of the real kind of truth of the idea of where it is and what it is. So that's the first thing. And then at the end of that, I say, okay, so that just took me, X amount of time. Maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's, 3 months, but it took me, a certain amount of time to do that. Now, if I could go back and tell myself the beginning of this process, how exactly, if I could just go and explain it to myself or bring myself through this process in the most efficient and most interesting possible way to get to where I have now gotten, what would I do? And that's what I try to get, create in an outline, because I'm going to try to basically take readers and I want to bring them right to where I am, or at least pretty close, but I want to do it in way, way quicker and way more fun than I had. So and that's the blog post that ends up coming out ideally. So that's kind of the process that I think about.
It's incredible. And again, it really, really shows through, because I have to say I probably quote Wait But Why once or twice a day when I talk about all the things that I've learned about AI or all the opinions that I've formed about relationships. And a lot of it comes from your ability to just jam pack decades of research into a post that's fun to read and allows, because we're all about the 20% that gives you the 80%. I wanted to also ask you, first I wanted to point out that I love the fact that you take from 70 or 80 sources. We call that in our courses brute force learning, because no one approach is going to give you everything. So I love that we have a congruence there. But I also wanted to ask, how do you structure all of this out? I mean, do you open a big Evernote notebook? Do you draw out a mind map? How do you keep track of all the tabs?
Yeah. So definitely a big piece of my thinking is about that exact thing. I will usually start with just a million Chrome tabs, and I just start opening everything and, I'll just start Googling different ways to think about a topic. What is AI? AI companies, AI overhyped, AI history, AI changed the world, AI dangerous, AI, cure cancer. I don't know what it is. I just Google a bunch of stuff that seems like potentially relevant. And then I will, in each of those separate windows, I'll then basically just click down the line on the first Google page and open all of those things and get going from there. And usually I'll start with Wikipedia and then click a bunch of with the links at the bottom of the Wikipedia, and that kind of gets me rolling. Mm-hmm. And as I do this, this is not a system that is going to blow anyone's mind, but it works for me, which is that I have, I use text edit. I love text edit in Mac and Mac OS. It is so simple. I can't stand Microsoft Word and Pages. You can't make these windows small. They have all these, sidebar and margins and headings and toolbars. And it's all to me a big distraction. It just takes up valuable space on my little 13-inch screen. So for me, what I like is I can get text edit. So it's literally just like a white rectangle, and I can have a bunch of them kind of like puzzle pieces covering the screen. And then I can use, whatever, the different OS tools to just be able to see them all at once or whatever it is. So then I'll try to start, throwing initial thoughts and information and quotes and stats and, anything else I'm learning. I'll just try to throw it into this one big text edit document along with links to where these things work. I'm going to have to cite them if I use them. And I end up with a big pile of thoughts and notes and quotes and all of that at the end. And then I'll take that, one document, and I'll open up a bunch of new ones, and I'll try to start putting I'll try to create buckets of kind of sub idea. And then that just going through the process of actually extracting sub buckets from the big pile. Just after I'm just doing that, regardless of what the documents end up having in them, I've now clarified my own thinking a lot. And then I'll often just open up a blank one, and I'll start playing around with potential structures. And each, process, every time I do one of these parts of the process, I end up coming up with a few epiphanies. I'm like, oh, wait, no, totally just like this thing when this happens, or whatever it is, or I'll think of a good metaphor. And so I end up doing a lot of brainstorming in the process of kind of gathering and structuring and organizing ideas and information. Yeah. And then by the time I get down to the final outline where I'm like, okay, this is the outline. It's again, there's been 8 of these different iterations of process here. And by the time I'm there, I also have come up with a bunch of the kind of jokes and metaphors and explanations in doing that. And then a lot of the stuff will come out just as I write. A lot of new ideas suddenly spring out as you start writing. So that, yeah, it's kind of
That's fascinating. Part of me is thinking right now, I would love to just sit down with you and mind map, help you mind map one of these posts. But on the other hand, I'm like, your system works, and it works despite the fact that, as you said, it's not going to blow anyone away. It's not a super complex, high-tech system.
No, it's actually a system that literally a writer 200 years ago could have basically done the same system,
right.
A little bit less efficient because you can't copy and paste, and not using modern tools. And I have tried, a visual thing, and I'm just kind of, to me, it's just noise. It's just unnecessary because I can see very clearly. What I do is I use bold and caps, and I use different font sizes sometimes. Those to me create very clear kind of hierarchies of, heading and subheading. So I can just glance down my document and just quickly see what I'm doing there. Now, I'm sure there are ways that I will, at some point in the future, I will evolve this, and I'll look back and say, wow, that was just a real basic system. But I don't know. For me, it's just, I feel like the thing holding me back is never this system. It's always just the amount of work and amount of information to deal with. But I know where everything is, and also you can just Command F. You can search quickly for a word in it. And I've gotten very quick with, the keyboard shortcuts, and the system itself, it does work for me.
I think there's something to be learned there as well, which is different systems work for different people, and you don't have to be. Sometimes we have this tendency, especially myself, my team has called me out on it. There's a great new software that lets you do all this and that. And sometimes just the burden of learning a new system or shifting to a new system is not worth the added gains of getting there.
Yeah. I mean, even for me, even the way I use my calendar, I use Google Calendar because I have to coordinate with other people. But if it were up to me, I never would. I would just have a list. I have a notes, and the app Notes that syncs to my phone and my computer. I just have a list of days in caps, and then the things I have to do on those days below them. And to me, that has never been equal because I can put something in there in 1.5 seconds, and I can just see it all. I can see 50 days at once. The other thing is just all the colors and all the different pages. It just, to me, it's prettier and it looks a lot more professional. And to me, it's just slower and less efficient. So, I mean, I know I'm an old man about this kind of stuff, but the other one thing I didn't mention is that I ended up sometimes, and this is maybe more when you're talking about maps, there are times when a visual is important, when I want to kind of not really map out sections of a post, but it's more I want to draw a potential kind of drawing I'm going to do, or I want to kind of, I don't know, just something visual. And so then I have a big, like an oversized notebook and a, mechanical pencil that I'll like pull out. And that to me is a good creative space too. And sometimes that's the right way I'll just spend like a bunch of hours in there just sketching and kind of mapping different things. And that to me can be helpful as well. That's the one thing that sometimes I need outside of my text edit Chrome world.
I like that. I've also had a return to paper and realizing that as good as you think you are, and this is a great segue into our next discussion about procrastination, but as well behaved as you think you are, you just can't resist the distraction when you're on a computer. If you just want to think, sometimes pen and paper is the only way to really fully focus only on the thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Or whiteboards or, just something like that can stoke new ideas.
So Tim, your TED Talk is Into the Mind of a Master Procrastinator, and yet you are creating some of the most thorough content out there. I have a feeling you're going to say it's every day is a struggle, but tell me about your thoughts on procrastination and tell me about how you consistently overcome it to create such masterpieces.
Well, it is a constant struggle. There's always a little child whose voice is very prominent, every day, during, the work part of the day. And the child is exactly it's me as a child. So he's not just a dick. He is a dick, but he thinks in very black and white. And he just also really wants everything to be perfect and gets really excited about like a big, perfect work day. Mm-hmm. And if that's shot, if this isn't going to be perfect, or if you have to stop at some point later today, then the whole thing just throws his hands up and doesn't really want to do it. And it's not that fun. Or if he's researching something, he wants to understand it perfectly. And all these new interesting links just emerged from this last article. And while the adult's saying, well, okay, that's fine. You might learn something there, but it's just not worth the time right now. Let's just move with this. The child has a little fit and says, no, we have to read all of those links too. How about all those links? And
right. There's
a constant battle going on between like just the rational, measured, gray area seeing adult and the much less mature, much more extreme child. And that battle manifests in many ways. So you can, a lot of these look like just classic procrastination, and they are, but they really emerge from a bunch of qualities of that, whoever I was, like 7. And so it's the kind of thing that's helped a lot by external pressure, external deadlines. And as a solo, blogger writer, you don't really have those. I mean, you have a lot of pressure from readers who are expecting stuff. So that helps a lot. And you just have a lot of guilt about people who are either, who are supporting you, but also just who are just really into what you're doing. And so you feel like you're letting them down. So that is helpful. That's a really nice external pressure, but that's about all you got. Don't have a hard deadline where this is not getting published if it's not up by the date or something like that. That doesn't exist. And so you really are left, because that deadline is like an assistant in your head. I call it the panic monster in my talk, but
I love it.
That deadline is like a really helpful extra character in your head to make it like a 2-on-1 thing against the child. And when you don't have that there, it's just this adult in there against the child in there. And the adult is not really great at dealing with the child. He's not very, very good at parenting. And so I think one day I'll figure this out and I'll really have cracked it. I'm working on it. I'm like, really, it's like, I want to figure it out. And when I do, I'll write about it and I'll have great answers to these questions on the podcast. At the moment, all I can say is that it is a big problem. It's really, really a tough one. And a lot of people like to say, but isn't it good also? Isn't procrastination important? And what I usually say to that is like, well, if you're comparing it to someone who, Adam Grant talks about being a precrastinator, where he gets so much anxiety from the possibility of like a future panic monster or from whatever, that when he just does everything right away, when he gets an assignment or he has a project that he wants to do, he's just going to sit down and just knock it out and finish. And I think there is an argument to be less like that if you can be also, and to kind of, but I think the answer isn't to be like me. The answer is to be somewhere in the middle. And my point with this always is that the adult in my head knows this lesson. The adult does not want to be a procrastinator. The adult wants to take all that time, all that mulling time, and actually figure it out and basically get all the benefits that people get from procrastination. It's that the kid wants to go 5 steps further than that. And that's not productive anymore. That's no longer efficient. Now you're just hurting yourself and you're hurting your work. So yeah, I mean, and yes, sometimes the monkey which is what I call the child in my
The
talk.
instant gratification monkey.
That's the instant gratification monkey.
I love the monkey.
Sometimes the monkey has me on my like 7th ancillary research article and I want to kill him. But in that article, I come across something really good and I have a new thought. And so, yeah, it's not that nothing good comes from it. But if I had a choice to, in a certain period of time, put out 6 posts or put out 2, and in the 2 posts, I might have 4 more epiphanies that have emerged in them. It's not worth it. I'd rather put out the 6 posts, because it's at some point, because you can always just keep going. You can say, well, I'm just going to do 1 post in 20 years and it's going to be the best. It's just not worth it at some point. You have to, if you had unlimited time, sure, but you don't. So yeah. So I think it's something I think it's a problem, and it's a problem to work on, and it goes deep into your own, psychology and really even into your childhood, try to figure out what the hell you can do to kind of rein it in.
It is. I do want to point out a couple of interesting things that you said to our audience. One is the leveraging of external pressures, and designing. I'm reading right now a couple of different books on willpower. And one of the biggest ideas is just design your environment so that it kind of forces you to behave the way that you want to behave. And I guess as you were talking, I was thinking about, you guys have over 4,000 people on Patreon waiting and applying pressure. And not just that, you have expenses that are paid when you publish posts. So you've done a really nice job creating a system that forces you, to remain somewhat consistent. And then I also just think it's a really interesting case study to point out to our audience that you have this tremendously successful blog and you put out this amazing quality content and you are a master procrastinator. And so there's no need to get into what I think I've heard you call a shame spiral over it, because you can succeed despite, just like people can succeed despite the fact that they wake up at 11 a.m. every morning, you can succeed despite the fact that you are not a precrastinator, but a procrastinator.
Yeah, look, and everyone's dealing with a bunch of stuff. No one has a smooth, easy path to anything hard. It's just not possible. So the question is just, what are the things? There's always some bad habits, or there's some fears. There's self-doubt, or there's some kind of addiction somewhere, or there's something external. You're dealing with family problems. You're dealing with, someone else in your life has a problem. Whatever it is, like there's going to be some struggles. So I certainly wouldn't look at procrastination and say, oh, well, I'm going to say, okay, well, this is mine. This is one of mine. This is one of the things this is one of the roadblocks. And you got to just try to figure out, how to outsmart it, how to get by it, and also just improve. If you get a little bit better at it, just a little bit better every year, well, 7 years later, you really conquered it. So, and also usually in these internal kind of psychological roadblocks, it's really complicated. There's a lot going on. And usually somewhere in there is also one of the things that helps you be successful. So it's like, it is the fact that my inner child is very alive, which is why I go through all of these particular struggles. Well, that inner child being alive also is helpful in many other ways.
Oh, yeah. I think it's one of the things that makes your blog so incredibly readable and so enjoyable. And also the drawings, with all due respect, like that's the inner child drawing the panic monster,
For sure. The inner child is the one who would say, well, everyone says you should do it like this, but screw it. Like, I don't, do it this way instead. And the adult would be probably more fearful to do something out of the box. And so, that inner child has been responsible for a lot of the things that I would say are different or creative, or especially in a childish way about the blog. And that's just one example of and I think everyone would say that a lot, when someone's going through something, right, an addiction is a common kind of somewhere in the thing that makes them addicted to the thing that's causing them a lot of problems is also a quality that is probably serving them in other ways. It's this certain personality trait. And so, you don't want to just only look at the negative things that come from that personality trait, when that obsessiveness, or it might be that the thing that makes someone addicted is also what makes them super excitable as a human. And they get so excited about something they like that they end up maybe becoming addicted in a bad way, but it's also what that spark that makes them special in so many other ways, or makes them successful in so many other ways. So,
right.
Yeah, you got to try to manage these things versus get rid of them, because you just got to figure out how to manage them. Yeah.
And it reminds me a lot of, ADD, which so many people try to get rid of, and actually has created some of the best artists and it's certainly business people.
I was going to say, if you could go diagnose, Da Vinci, and Einstein and half of these other people, I wouldn't be surprised if like 3/4 of them would be diagnosed today as having like a horrible learning disability.
Right. So that is a lovely segue into what I'm sure you knew was coming, which is Elon Musk. You are probably one of the very, very, very few privileged people who have ever gotten to be a fly on his wall and follow him around for 2 weeks. The show is called Becoming Superhuman. He is clearly superhuman. Expand. Tell us about that. Tell us about that experience and what you learned from observing the way that he lives and how he performs.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite me following him for 2 weeks. It was more like for 6 months, it was that I spent a good amount of time in California over a few days with him. But then it was for 6 months, I basically could put my head down and work on these posts. Well, just to give a little background, somehow he got a hold of my AI post, which I wrote in early 2015, and he read it and he tweeted it out. So that was a really shocking moment for a random blogger in the world. And then he tweeted out part 2 a few weeks later. So that was this was all very surprising, very exciting. And then his office reached out and said, he'd like to get on the phone, which is, again, these are not things that a blogger expects, but it was
drawings of you dropping your jaw to the ground. That's one of my favorite posts.
Yes, my head fell off my body. Yeah, we had a conversation, got into a bunch of stuff. Clearly just a lot of ideas going back and forth, and so I ended up flying out to California to sit down in person. And again, the conversation went double long as it was supposed to, and getting into just really getting into a lot of different stuff, because I think when a topic would come up that we were intending to focus on, like the importance of a sustainable energy world, all these ancillary thoughts would come off. And I think that he does that too. And so we would do that. And so it was really fun. It was really like, he's surprisingly kind of normal to talk to, where it's like, I would forget that I wasn't talking to just a smart friend of mine. We'd be talking about something like Mars or whatever. And, we were talking about the weirdness of multiplanetary and how this is like a great leap for the whole species and blah, blah, going like that, just like I would with a friend. And then he would say something like, yeah, well, we hope to kind of have a Dragon 2 go there by now. And I have to remind myself, like, oh my God, yeah, this guy, he's the one doing this thing. Like, it was just very weird. But anyway, yeah. And so that was the beginning. And then the project was basically, I had this, it was a very mutually decided thing. He didn't really come with a specific idea, but we kind of said, okay, I'm going to do what I kind of the AI post, which is, like you said, a really long, thorough kind of explainer. I'm going to try to do that about the stuff he's working on. So a sustainable energy world, what does that mean? How does Tesla play a role in that? And then multiplanetary colonization of Mars, multiplanetary civilization. Why is that important? Why do we want to do that? And how does SpaceX play a role? And, I told him I want to be really authentic. And it's not going to be an advertisement for your companies. I might say bad things about them. I'll do it as thoroughly as I did the AI post. And he was like, great. What he's obsessed with is accuracy. If you criticize something about what he's doing and it's accurate, he actually likes it. He says, maybe I can learn something. He likes negative feedback. It's when people say something that's not right, but he can't handle that and he needs to go correct it. And I relate to that. I think I also, like, if someone criticizes me in the comment section and I think it's fair, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll take that information and, whatever. I mean, it doesn't feel good, but it's whatever. But if someone says something that's just not true, if they say, something is inaccurate and it's not, they clearly didn't read the whole post and they criticize, then that drives me crazy. So anyway, we were on the same page there about how, about just being thorough and accurate was the real thing that mattered here. And so I went and spent then 6, even 8 months, just fully diving into this project. And wow. So what I was able to do was get on the phone with him kind of again and again throughout this process when I needed to. If I just said, I want to just
so cool.
have another discussion. Yeah, it was super cool. It was like, it's real, like, you can't really ask for more as a writer than to get to have access to someone like him. So it was really special. And then one of the things I was doing the whole time was, in addition to this, I was planning a last post in this series, which is going to be trying to kind of, like, you talk about superpowers, like what is this guy's superpower? What's his secret sauce? Mm-hmm. And so I was going to do a final post, not about SpaceX or Tesla or anything like that, but about why he's able to do what he's doing. And it's not just because he's this magical, super genius man. It wasn't that. It's not that. It's something much simpler, something much more ordinary that was going on, that I was trying to, wrap my head around what is making him different than all these other really smart, really wealthy, really motivated entrepreneurs who do big things, but nothing remotely as big, and certainly not 4 different things that are monumental at the same time. So that was kind of the second motive I had in this whole process.
So what was your takeaway? I mean, what makes him tick and operate at such a superhuman level?
So to me, it started to actually be pretty clear. I think that, yes, he's extraordinarily intelligent and he has means, and now he has a reputation, and he's ridiculously hardworking and driven. So of course, those are all helpful, right? But point to a really successful entrepreneur, and they probably have every one of those qualities. And there's, hundreds of thousands of them, and there's not very many Elon Musk. So to me, the thing that is different is, let's take a single moment here. He sells PayPal, okay, along with Peter Thiel and a group of others. He ends up personally with $180 million, sitting in his bank account. And he's about, I think maybe he's about 28, 30, something like that. And so at that point, some people will just keep the money, stop working hard, maybe do some investing right off into the sunset, and great, and good for them. Some people will stay really ambitious and they want to get really philanthropic, or they want to build companies. They do it with other people's money, but almost none of them are going to put all their money down on something risky. That's just very unusual. Now, he wanted to start a rocket company. He decided he wanted to start a company that could actually eventually take people to Mars. So the information he gets when he starts talking about this from everyone is that this is not possible for an entrepreneur to do. Many, many billionaires have tried to do this. They've all failed. NASA can't even launch people into space, right now, other than, this $1.6 billion launch space shuttle. There's only 3 countries that can do it. The Soviet Union and the US for decades tried to, because the big innovation was you needed to land a rocket. So if you can land rockets, you can reuse them just like airplanes. And then the cost plummets by like 100-fold. And you can't have a serious space industry without doing that. And that was the big goal. And they're saying that, the Soviet Union and the US for decades tried to do this. They couldn't do it. Billionaires can't even launch stuff, let alone, have the groundbreaking innovation that would be needed to land rockets. It's just not possible. And so, of course, no one wanted to fund it. So not only is it not possible, but you're going to put all of your wealth down to try to do this crazy, stupid idea that's going to fail, and you're going to be a laughing stock. And I don't know anyone who can hear all that and, who starts off with the idea, I think I can do this, and then hears all of that and learns all of that, and then still thinks, yeah, well, I can do this. Everyone at that point says, okay, you know what? Yeah, this is stupid. And they just lose their confidence. They say, conventional wisdom is telling me the opposite of what I think. We all drop our own assumptions at that point and just say, well, conventional wisdom must be right in history. The fact that no one else has done this, that must be right. We call that, reasoning by analogy. That's what Elon's term for it. So the other way to reason is to reason from first principles, to say, well, let me just look at, not what everyone thinks, but what do I actually know? Well, I know what physics, I know about physics, and I know about, how big a rocket is, and I know about costs, and I know how much the actual price of a rocket would be with all those costs. I can get that information. I can crunch those numbers. I understand, gravity. I understand psychology and the will to go to Mars that I think would be there if we could do it. And basic things like that. And he looked at all of that. First principles is a physics term. It's your axioms that you kind of puzzle together to get to a conclusion. You don't worry about what's already thought of or whatever. And so he puzzled together those axioms, his first principles, and he ended up with a conclusion that, yeah, this makes sense to start. It might not be a success. He knew it was not that high a probability, but he said it's worth it to try. And I think we have a good chance. And so he did it. And no one does that. No one does that at that point. So it just makes him very, very, very unusual. And then you can see this reasoning continue. So even if someone did start the company, they wouldn't do it as well if they weren't reasoning. So he then would, other people would look at look at a NASA rocket and kind of try to emulate that. But he didn't. He just said, well, let's just start from scratch. What should a rocket be? It reminds me of Apple creating the iPhone. They didn't say, well, what should our keyboard look like? Let's make a cooler keyboard than anyone's ever made. It'll click so nicely. It'll look so simple. They said, what should a mobile device be? And they puzzled up from there, and they ended up with no keyboard. And they ended up with a lot of things that were totally different because they were just independently reasoning. And that's really unusual. And I think when smart people independently reason, and then when inevitably their conclusions conflict with what everyone thinks, with what conventional wisdom says, they're able to have enough confidence in their reasoning process and enough disdain for conventional wisdom to actually act on their reasoning in that conflict. That makes that person 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100,000. And when they do it, I think those people are often tremendously successful and disruptive. They disrupt, whether it's in the arts and music and writing, or whether it's in entrepreneurship or in science or in cancer research or you can just, in all these things that require innovation, I think the first principles reasoners are always the groundbreakers. And so Elon to me is like, I've said before, he's like the Michael Jordan of first principles reasoning. He's unbelievably natural at it. It's just the only way he knows how to reason. And then you combine that with a lot of intelligence and drive and money, and then this desire to do big things. And you have Elon Musk. It's not that shocking to me. It's not luck. You have him start the same career 10 times. I think he's just as successful. At least 8 of the 10 times. I don't think this is a luck here going on.
I'm really glad I asked you that because I never, ever thought about it, but you're exactly right. And he did that again and again with Tesla. Everyone said electric cars don't work and the range doesn't work and consumers don't want them because they're not sexy. And it's, today it's not even that green.
Well, and also the big fact that there hasn't been a successful car startup coming out of the US since Chrysler in 1925.
Right.
Right there, everyone quits. Everyone says, well, this is obviously not possible, or someone would be doing it. And he just doesn't think that way.
Right. And same with PayPal and now the Boring Company. Who thinks of this stuff if they're using the preconceived notions? Right.
PayPal, everyone was saying, if you go back, Ashley Vance's book, he talked about in PayPal, they said, no one's ever going to put their money, their financial info on the internet. And before that, he started Zip2 with his brother. And everyone said no one's ever going to advertise on the internet. They laughed at that concept and that's why these were great ideas then, because these are obvious now. And at some point they go from not obvious to obvious. And the entrepreneurs who are there that actually had figured that out ahead of time are the massive successes. And then, so he's always there, and not because he sees the future, because he sees the present, because he can just look accurately at the present and see the truth when everyone else is listening to conventional wisdom, which is always lagging 10 years behind.
Right. Wow, that's really insightful. I'm so glad that I asked. Just different perspective that I think you'd only get from actually talking to the man himself.
And listening to interviews. Honestly, it's amazing how much you just, go and watch, Google him on YouTube and listen to the wording he uses, listen to his press conferences and how he talks. And you'd be surprised how much you can gather from a lot of people just by hearing them interviewed on YouTube.
Rock on. Tim, I know we're coming up on time here. It's completely flown by, but I want to ask you some rapid fire questions before we wrap up.
Sure.
First one, any skills, habits, or routines that you feel help you perform at the highest level?
Well,
text edit, right?
Yeah. I think, the skills part of it, I would say one thing I work on, and I think is a really important skill for something like what I do is, just getting good at looking for patterns and looking for connections. I find that when I dig into a topic of any kind, it always boils down to a bunch of stuff I've already written about, because there's just not that many different concepts out there. Honestly, there's not that many really. There's a few kind of universal truths and a few universal kind of struggles that every human is. And I just find that most things and most topics, whether it's something you're writing about or something you're undertaking in your own life, in the end, if you strip off all the layers, there's just the same, it's this core struggle in here, or it's the child against the adult in my head struggle, or it's the independent reasoning versus conventional wisdom struggle at the bottom, or it's whatever it is, it's ego versus whatever. So I think it's helped me, as a writer. Yeah, I would say, just
that's solid.
Stripping off the layers and looking for the common patterns and things like that is very important.
That's solid. I also want to ask, are there any products or services besides text edit, of course, that you simply couldn't live without?
For my work?
In life, in general.
Okay, well, let's just think here. Okay, so software, this is very mundane answer here, but FlyCut, I'm obsessed with, is a little app on my computer. It's a Mac App Store app, FlyCut, and I can copy and paste 50 things, and they're all just sitting there in a queue, as opposed to you can only have one at a time.
Yep.
That one is invaluable to me. And then, this one's really important. It's called Shift It. And I can, with keyboard shortcuts, move text edit windows and Chrome windows to maximum or right corner or left side instantly with a thing. So that's really important. I love that one. And then the most important software app that I own is my New York Times crossword app, because it's just someone asked me recently what the best, it's just I find it to be just the most delightful time waster. So I don't know if that's actually a good recommendation, because it's also a time waster, but it's great mental gymnastics, and you just get better and better as you do them, and then they become more addictive. So those are 3 very random answers for you.
Those are great. So we have officially come up on time. Typically, I ask guests at the end of the show where we should send people. I want to ask top 2 or 3 posts that were your favorites, maybe not the most popular ones, but the ones that you would prefer people to check out because you're most proud of them.
There's a post I did a long time ago called Putting Time in Perspective. And it's not really a post as much as it's a big graphic. But to me, that one was my favorite one to do. And one of the only ones I actually go back to a lot to actually read through it because I just like the info in it, which is just the history of everything. And it just, to me, continues to put different parts of modern and far back history in perspective. So I think you can just Google like Putting Time in Perspective, WBW, and it'll come up. And then I would say, anyone dealing with procrastination should check out the procrastination posts because, well, I'm definitely not an expert on how to fix it. I'm an expert on what it feels like to be a procrastinator. So at least it's some commiserating there.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then there's also the Life in Weeks is a post that a lot of people say, had an impact on them. These are all 3 of these I've made very short recommendations, all very short posts.
To get people hooked.
Yeah, it's someone new to a 25,000 word post. It's not very nice. Yeah, that one is it just shows you all of the weeks of your life on one chart, and to me that's like, I don't know, there's something weird about looking at that. And I actually have a poster now of that we sell in the store that I have in my apartment that I just like look at sometimes and then I freak out. So
warning to anyone who reads it, it will make you call your parents, guaranteed.
Yes. Yeah. There's a spin-off post of that called The Tail End where I talk about how like, if you're not living with your parents anymore, you've actually, even though hopefully you have many decades left with them, you actually, in terms of physical time spent in the same room interacting with them, you've basically used up like 93% of that time or 90% of that time because just, you saw them so much when you were young, you don't anymore. And that I think also makes everyone freak out and call their parents.
Totally.
Freaking out doesn't feel good, but often it's like shaking you into the rational, very kind of sometimes very stark and unpleasant truth. And I think that can be something that is important to do, even if it feels bad.
Totally. Tim Urban, Wait But Why, one of my favorite, if not my favorite blogs on the web. I want to thank you so much for spending time with us. Closing note, I want to ask, what's the big takeaway you'd like our audience to remember? If there is one.
Yeah, I think it was something we said earlier, which is there's at least one, maybe more, big struggle going on in your head that's between you and the life you want to be living, whether it's, something with your confidence or something with your work ethic or your moral ethic situation or whatever it is. And it's just like to realize that like everyone has a few of those. And so, and working on managing whichever ones you have is like the core human struggle that every person is doing. And just because the one that you have isn't what your friends have or whatever, it feels like it's this flaw that's like that you have that, but it's everyone is like trying to fight through a specific thing or two. And so it's like, that's the good fight. That's what you're supposed to be. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Everyone's doing it. And so just do it, just manage that, work on it. And it's doable. You can just psychology.
That's the secret to becoming superhuman. I love it.
Yeah, we can work on our own psychology. So
I love it. Tim, thanks again. I really look forward to keeping in touch. I know our audience is going to love this episode. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today, but I hope you guys really enjoyed the show and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.